The Me Too campaign is giving countless women and men a platform to share their experiences with sexual harassment and misconduct.
In her deeply personal CBSNews.com article addressing this Me Too moment, CBS News contributor Lynda Tran opens up about being sexually assaulted as a child and her struggle to come forward. And
Lynda Tran joins us now from Washington, and she's also a partner at 270 Strategies. Lynda, I have to thank you for writing this. You reveal something very personal, that you had been sexually assaulted starting at the age of 4 by a much, much older cousin. And I have to say, every time I hear another story, whether it's somebody I know of or somebody I know, like you personally, it sparks another conversation amongst my friends, my coworkers, and inevitably something comes forward. An experience that you normalized before or you forgot about before, you compartmentalize, it brings this stuff up. I want to ask you about the experience of coming forward, because you write in your piece that you you told very, very few people about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a word, Anne-Marie, I would say the decision to talk about it was terrifying. You know, it is not a part of my life that I had ever shared widely. I could count on one hand before writing this piece how many individuals I'd ever told anything about this to. And when something like that happens to you, whether it's when you're an adult or in my case when you're really, really small, it really shapes the way that you look at the world. It shapes the way that you approach relationships that you have with people, whether they're close or they're just in passing. And so it was very, very scary to put it on paper.
You know, and to echo what Anne-Marie said, Lynda, you and I are friends and colleagues, and when I read this, my heart just went out to you. But you know what it also made me do? It made me think, because a lot of these stories have been in the abstract. These are, in some cases, famous women. These are people that, you know, most Americans do not know or interact with on a regular basis, except through their movie screens or their television screens. And yet here you were, somebody that I'm close to, somebody that I'm friends with, talking about something that is so deeply personal. It made me think that, you know, maybe I should have conversations with my sister, with my mother, with other women in my life. And you know, you described the word shame. When you endured this abuse, you were ashamed. How were you able to overcome that feeling? What was that moment when you decided that this is not something I should be ashamed of?
You know, what's interesting is that when I was little, I didn't really know what was going on, you know, and even though I was 4 when it started, as I got to be a little bit older of a child, I would remember that these things had happened and didn't really understand what it was about. But then there was some point, maybe in my teen years, where I finally started to understand that what had happened was a really terrible thing, and I didn't know what to do with it. And when you don't know what to do with something that has so much defined who you are as a person, you start to feel worried, and that's where the shame part comes in. You know, I wondered if there was something that I had done that was wrong. I wondered if there was a reason I had been targeted. And so those are the kinds of feelings and emotions that you have as you try to make sense of something traumatic that has happened to you. As you get much older, I mean, as I said, I didn't share that experience with anybody until I was in my 20s. I started to wonder how it had impacted the way that I treated other people. And so the shame and the worry and the concern, all those things are just kind of wrapped up into each other. And if you're somebody who wants to be meaningful and vulnerable and honest with the people that you have relationships with, you feel this sense of shame that there's something that you're always hiding that is so important about yourself.
In the piece, you talk about how we have to change the words that we use, and you talk about we have to call it what it is. We can't call it misconduct.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that part of what makes somebody like me, and I think a lot of women in general, whether they've had an experience with harassment or assault at all, bristle at the way that the conversation has been handled, despite the fact that there have been some good things about it, is this notion of labeling it misconduct or misbehavior. It just belittles what it is. It makes it seem like it's not as significant as what it actually is in the lives of people and in its impact on our culture. So we should call it harassment. We should call it assault, and we should not minimize it by these labels that make it sound like you're talking about locker room activity or, you know, this notion of boys will be boys.
Lynda, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it, and we hope that people will hear this and follow your path as well. Thank you, Lynda. Appreciate it.
Thank you.